From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dewalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't already, go leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Play or even on YouTube if you're watching the video. Make sure you subscribe so you get it as soon as it comes out. And leave a review if you love the content or tell a friend. That's the best way to help grow the podcast. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Can't believe it's already Wednesday, Paul. It's what a busy one. Happy to be back after the holiday break. I hope everyone enjoyed our holiday special episode with Nestle and Brian Waddell. But I'm tired, man. It's been nonstop, and normally you get a little bit of a break, right? You respond to emails a day or two later than normal, and as you know, we were up pretty late last night planning some things out, some exciting stuff in the works, and somehow found time to play a little bit of the Halo beta, which everyone's talking about, and truly is a fun grind.
So. You know what? I want to comment on this before we really get into it. I played Halo multiplayer, the new one, for the first time over the long weekend, and I will say I was not impressed.
Shocking.
At all. No, look, I'm an FPS guy through and through, right? Like this is my genre more than anything. But I found it boring and slow, and the movement's not great, and the levels are uninspired. Like the level design looks like it's straight out of 2005. It's just the whole thing. I don't get it. First of all, and just to back my skepticism up here, the Steam numbers at least, so I don't know how many are playing on Xbox Game Pass or whatever, but the Steam numbers at least were pretty bad, and the Twitch numbers were even worse from what I saw. Now, I don't know if that's just because it's still beta, whatever. That when the campaign comes out, it's going to explode. Who knows? But there's a hot take here that I don't think Halo multiplayer survives more than a year or two.
I want to sit on it, and I want to make our fans tune into the live show that we do Wednesdays, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, because we're going to definitely jump into that topic. But there's so much to unpack with what you said a lot that I agree with, some that I disagree with. I think it has a lot of potential. I don't want to share it all here. I want them to watch the live show. Also, if you don't make it live, we put it on the same RSS feed. It's available for you to listen throughout the week. It's more of the news analysis of all your favorite stories and events that we just don't get to in the show anymore because we have such awesome guests, which is hopefully a great segue. Paul, if you want to take over and introduce who we got this week.
We do. Before I take that segue and run with it, I do also want to say that by the time you listen to this or watch this, episode 1 of the Meta Business podcast, which is a completely separate podcast that we are launching this week, that will probably be out. It'll be out on YouTube, and it'll be out for you to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm just super excited about it. For those who maybe didn't hear the tease I did last week on the live stream, it's basically Business of Esports, but with a much bigger sort of view. And we're looking at big metaverse stories. So sort of the 3 or 4 biggest metaverse stories every single week, but with all the same business analysis. And the cool part is, for those of you who watched the live stream, I'm doing it with the Juice, none other than the Juice himself, Jeff Cohen. And so it's a lot of fun. Definitely check that out. If you're listening to this, it's almost for sure out. Episode 1 of the Meta Business Podcast. Now, let's get back to the Business of Esports podcast, because that's why we're all here. And this week, Jimmy, I think you undersold it. We have an amazing, amazing, amazing guest. We have none other than Anita Sharma, who is the founder and managing partner of Sharma Law. Anita, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, Paul and Jimmy, and thank you so much for having me. And by the way, I love the middle name, Paul the Prophet. I need some kind of nickname with my name. That's cool.
Don't we all?
We're still working on Jimmy, Anita. So
that's how you present yourself in public. I love it.
Not only do I present myself like that in public, people refer to me as that in public, and I hand out little stickers of myself as the prophet in public. So
that's amazing. I'll be waiting for my sticker. When do I get that? That would be awesome. I'll put it up on my fridge.
Anita, for those of you, for our listeners who maybe don't know about you or about Sharma Law, would love a little bit of your background, what you're doing in gaming or around gaming, why you decided to focus there, some of the big things you're seeing, talk about Sharma Law. Would love for you to give our audience the Anita story.
Wow. Okay. Where do I start? So I'm an entertainment lawyer. I'm an entertainment and IP lawyer, intellectual property. I have always been an entertainment lawyer. I've been practicing for about 20 years, which really dates me, but that is a fact. When I started out, it was really film and TV that I was focused on. This was way before gaming was a thing and even social media platforms were a thing. The reason I always wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. So when I was in law school, in second or third year, when everybody's deciding what they want to do, I was basically like, I love movies and I love parties, so I'm just going to become an entertainment lawyer. And that was pretty much the thought process. And that's how it all began. And I started working at a big law firm in New York City, went to law school in Canada, where I'm from, and moved to New York and started working at a firm here in New York, and was working in entertainment finance. And it was, a great place to start, but I really wanted to represent talent. So I spent a few years there, started my own practice, really scraped and hustled for clients, worked mostly in indie film at that time, which was, New York was really the mecca for that, and film was really my first love. And, it was tough. It was a real challenge, but like I said, entertainment was my focus, and that's all that I wanted to do. And so, fast forward to like 2008, 2009, and it was a real struggle here in New York, and, the markets had crashed and all of that. And so I ended up moving back to Toronto. I went to film school. I became a producer. I started producing indie films, and that was amazing. That was an incredible experience. And what that gave me was the point of view of a creator. So I wasn't a lawyer anymore. I was really on the creative side and sitting on the other side of the table. And that was really an amazing experience and really led me to where I am today. So I produced for a few years. I realized that, my real passion lay in the business and legal behind the art. And what I wanted to do was really help artists, creators, talent, further their art and their skills and build businesses. And so in 2013, I actually ended up with my first influencer client, and she just happened to be the biggest female YouTuber in the world at that time. And it was just through networking and the fact that I thought she was cool. And I didn't even really know I didn't really know at that point, social media platforms were like a lot of cat videos, and like people just didn't really, it wasn't a business, right? It was just a thing where you put up videos, a lot of cats. So I think that 2013 was really the tipping point of people realizing that you can actually make a living and you can create really interesting content. And for me, I realized that my clients in that space were able to bypass any gatekeepers. There were no gatekeepers on the internet, right? So they didn't have to have a studio approve their work. They didn't have to get financing. They could just do it all themselves. And that was incredible to me. I mean, that was just like all of a sudden my clients had a ton of leverage, right? Like they were able to, they owned their audience. They built their own audiences. They could put up content whenever they wanted. There were no gatekeepers. And so that's really when I started to work in digital, and very quickly we have become a leading law firm in representing talent in the digital space. Our roster in New York's we're the biggest. We have the biggest roster in New York City of digital media talent. Period. We represent 50 plus talent across all genres, including gaming, and so gaming is something that we've recently expanded into. And the first gaming deal we did was a phase plan deal for a team member. So again, it was starting out with a huge deal, and that was really interesting and really exciting. And just like the world of influencers and digital content creators, in gaming there were no precedents, right? Like for these contracts and for these agreements. And so we were able to take that skill set that we developed working with influencers, working with digital content creators, and figuring it out as we go along. And we're applying that now in gaming, because I think the gaming world, business and legal wise, is where the influencer world was in 2013. I think although it's a huge industry, although it's way bigger than Hollywood, business and legal wise, it's way behind, I think, in terms of contracts, in terms of talent, understanding sort of what's required, or understanding why they need a lawyer, or why they need a manager or agent, or all of those things. I think it's really in a growth stage, gaming, and that's very exciting to us. And we now have a handful of gaming clients. We've been doing a bunch of interesting deals, and everything is new. I mean, there's no precedence for the deals, and it's been a really incredible experience.
Anita, I just want to start on the gaming side, and I'm curious, was there a moment that you could point to where sort of the light bulb went on for you in terms of the gaming opportunity? And I don't know what that moment was, if you could describe it, or if you remember it, or if it was a thing.
I mean, I think it was Fortnite. I think it was recognizing what Fortnite is, and that it's more than just a game, that it's a community, and understanding that these gaming communities, it's not just about the individual gamers, it's about these communities that are so incredibly powerful. And I was like, what is this thing called Fortnite? Okay, I can admit I don't play games. I'm just not interested in playing video games, but I also don't play football, but I watch NFL football. It was the same sort of thing where it was like, this world is incredibly fascinating. It is massive, yet it doesn't seem to have much of a structure yet, and I was like, okay, I want to be part of that. But I found Fortnite really interesting.
And one of the trends that I think we have seen is, as the gaming industry has matured or starts to mature, I agree with you, we're still very early days, despite the size of the industry from a dollar perspective, is that a lot of the talent agencies, right, have been sort of born out of law firms. Is the strategy for you and Sharma Law, is the bigger opportunity for you that you see on the talent management side primarily, rather than doing, contracts or things like that? I'm curious, where do you see the big opportunity from a legal or business perspective that your skill set and your firm's skill set sort of applies to, that you want to move into?
So my firm primarily represents talent. And so we work on a team with those agents and managers.
Got it.
I see a massive opportunity in the talent space. Absolutely. Especially for gamers that have charisma, for gamers who want to expand, build businesses, and understand the power of their platform and the power of what they do. And I think there's huge opportunities, but gaming, there's just huge opportunities in general. I mean, you had mentioned the metaverse, in the intro. Again, this is a whole new thing, and I really believe, Fortnite was ahead of its time in that sense. It had already started to, we're already seeing concerts within Fortnite. For me, it's being passionate about entertainment and creativity. It's also, it's necessary to stay ahead of it, right? So gaming is obviously another form of entertainment that's evolving in a way where the metaverse it's already there in many ways, right? So that, to me, I was like, this is why gaming is so fascinating, because it's already where everybody thinks things are going. gaming for all intents and purposes is already there. And so there will be more interest in the talent, and I'm passionate about representing talent, and that's what I love to do. When I was in law school, I thought about becoming an agent. I'm glad that I didn't, because I don't think I would have wanted to do that full time, but a lot of what I do is negotiating and is representing talent, working with those teams.
I would love to follow up on that a little bit. And as a lawyer, I'm sure you're so familiar to getting asked the same or a similar question 6 times, right? To try and get 6 different answers that are maybe adjacent or similar. Because, as you kind of just spoke to, right? Like a lawyer is so much more than just a person who drafts a document. They're oftentimes, the first check for their client, or their first point of contact for their client to offer an opinion or something, to offer whether or not something's reasonable. So you kind of mentioned representing talent and kind of pairing them with their talent managers, or working in conjunction with this team around these entertainment properties. I'm kind of curious, either legal adjacent services that you provide your clients, or what your clients are asking you, hey, do you have someone that does this
Yeah.
or that, where you're also a facilitator and a networker for your client? I'm kind of curious, those two, if you can speak to both of those, on the services that you provide or that you see being needed.
Sure. So I will say, first of all, in the entertainment business, lawyers have a different role than other lawyers in other industries. I think in the entertainment business, more than anything, lawyers really have a much bigger role than being paper pushers. There are definitely industries where that's all that you do. All you do is sit at a desk and you push paper as an attorney. In entertainment, it's much different. I think much more is expected of you as an attorney, and you are expected to advise, you are expected to negotiate and to get great deals for your client, advocate for them in that way. So I will say I think that's very specific to the entertainment industry. When I describe what we do, I say we're general counsel for our clients, right? Anything that they need, we're going to help them with. If we can't help them with it, we're going to bring in outside counsel. So we help clients with everything from publishing deals to option agreements to appearances to, we helped a client buy an airplane. He flew a small Cessna around the world. Could I help him with that? No, I don't know anything about aviation law. And by the way, it's not easy to buy an airplane. Which was interesting to me. It's actually quite difficult. So, we brought in an aviation lawyer, we worked with them. So, basically it's whatever needs arise for our clients. And there's needs all the time because they're building businesses. They need employment agreements. They're bringing people on board. They need NDAs for assistants to sign. So every day it's something different, new things come up. And we also do a lot of trademark work, copyright work. So if they're creating content, we make sure they're protected. Their ideas are protected. The expression of their ideas are protected. So it's any legal need they have, they come to us first and we figure it out for them. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's litigation. We have litigation counsel we use. We recently had some litigation over some copyright infringement stuff, somebody copying what a client's doing. We do a lot of cease and desist of fake merch. So it really, really varies, but we're basically general counsel for each of our clients.
Anita, can you talk to, because it's interesting, you had almost like an entire career in the entertainment industry, and gaming is sort of the newer frontier for you. How much overlap, both from a legal and business standpoint, is there between, call it entertainment more broadly, film maybe specifically because of your experience, and the gaming world? Like, how much of the skill sets transfer, the expertise, is it true sort of one-to-one, or is gaming more nuanced or different in some way?
So I'll talk about the similarities first. So the similarities are really the intellectual property, right? Intellectual property laws have remained the same for 100 years plus. So those laws still apply to all of these new industries. And unfortunately, it's often like trying to fit a round peg in a square hole because they're antiquated. And that's why we're having all of these struggles now, the DMCA, et cetera, and Twitch, and we could talk about that. But so in that sense, like IP laws have not changed. So all of those, that copyright principles, et cetera, they apply to all IP, whether it's a film, TV show, a song, or a game, or gamer content, right? So that hasn't changed. I think what's different is that there's very entrenched practices within film and television and music. Whereas in gaming and digital media in general, it's still the Wild West out there. So what makes it different is that you really have to have an attorney and people on your team that are flexible, that are innovative, that react quickly, because it moves so fast. This industry, gaming, anything in digital moves very quickly, because the amount of time it takes to create content has been, decreased by like a huge proportion, right? It takes over a year to make a film. It takes, a day to make content, possibly to post, on a platform. So it's a different skill set to work in anything digital and to work in gaming, because you really, as an attorney, the whole thing is like you're supposed to always know the answer to the question before the question's asked, and that's not the case in this industry. It's not the case in gaming. Like, we're figuring out as we go along, and we're figuring out those precedents and the contracts and the agreements and what they should look like. And, negotiating with somebody like a FaZe Clan is like dealing with an 800-pound gorilla, but at the same time, with no talent, there's no team. So, you really need to have an attorney that understands that.
Having now worked with Jimmy for definitely long enough, I've heard "it depends" as an answer so often now that I get that. You mentioned Twitch and DMCA, and it's a bit of a rabbit hole to go down, but Jimmy and I had a bit of an argument on last week's live stream around where sort of that's going. Call it that, as in this sort of this friction between these two forces. My view is this never gets solved because of the nature of the music industry and their history and how they sort of have dealt with these issues in the past. Twitch, obviously a much more forward-thinking kind of corporation. It's part of Amazon, right? Like, do you see the Twitch DMCA thing getting resolved anytime soon? Do you see content creators sort of being able to create free and clear of these worries with some system in the background that still rewards sort of the original authors? Where do you see that entire issue going, Anita? Like, what does the next 5 years look like for that entire issue?
Sure. And I'm happy to answer your question, but I'm so curious about what the argument was with Jimmy. Does Jimmy's opinion was something completely different than that? Like, he does.
No, Jimmy's opinion, I'll let you, Jimmy, give it.
Well, it was just funny because I thought when Paul was going to pose that question to you that it would be a lot more biased and kind of, coaching towards his conclusion.
I can't coach a lawyer. I would know what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I was happy the way he asked it, honestly. But yeah, we brought it up on the live show last week, and it's one of these issues, right? That's been recurring. It's been boiling to a simmer, even, and I kind of think that there's a lot of tools in play, or at least a lot of interest, where this problem, which wasn't solved for a while now, forever, is going to be solved in the next year. I think that the players are getting too big. I think that the people involved, the frequency within which this is inhibiting, everyone's work, honestly, and deal flow is coming to a point where, and also the fact that I think that the game developers are realizing, hey, we need these people to play our games on stream and to promote it for us, and to do what we can also to kind of help alleviate those burdens. Basically, for me, what the aha moment was when I saw the Tuesday slide dance in Fortnite with the Drake audio track behind it, this little 8-second clip. When I saw them do that after the whole copyright fight the year before over the Carlton dance, right? When I saw that they actually licensed that music for Fortnite, I thought, well, it's only a matter of time before the rest of these problems have some type of mechanism that's being solved. I don't want to speak to Paul's counterpoint because he made a good argument about, other tech ventures that have started and failed trying to solve this in the past. I just think it's more a matter of time and opportunity, as well as, hey, this is becoming a bigger problem and there's more money at stake now. So I think it's going to be resolved within the next year. Paul disagrees.
Yeah, so I agree that it has to be solved because it's a real business issue for Twitch. So Twitch is really the only platform out there that is the platform for gaming, right? So if you look at Facebook gaming, I mean, they have 2% or something of gamers on there. This is what I will say. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes with Twitch. I'm so curious because it's so insane to me that they cannot, or will not make an agreement with music publishers the way Facebook made an agreement and the way TikTok has made agreements. And so there's a disconnect there, right? Like, so we're missing something. Something is, we don't know something that's happening in the background, because there is absolutely no way that Twitch cannot make a deal, right? They have hundreds of millions of dollars, and other platforms have made deals. So that's the first thing I'll say. Second thing is, they're owned by Amazon. Amazon owns Amazon Music. Like, this should be a no-brainer, right? So this is the other thing where, again, like, we're missing some information here, because that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I represent gamers and talent, it really upsets me. It upsets me because these platforms make a ton of money off of my clients. And so they should be able to, they should help them, right? They should help them use copyright music, or they should help them not get penalized if it's playing in the background, if it's an incidental use. So Twitch, in September made a deal with the National Music Publishers Association. Apparently this was a huge breakthrough. It's not. It hasn't changed anything. It doesn't allow Twitch users to use music. All it does is it just softens the blow, right? So it allows these music rights holders to say, when they file a complaint, to say, okay, well, it was only incidental use. We want the video down. They're gonna like take the video down still, or they're gonna take the live stream, they're gonna take the content down, and they're gonna give the player, the gamer, a slap on the wrist, right? And then if it happens too many times, then that's when you're gonna get banned or suspended. And somehow they're gonna have this process into place where they're gonna determine who are flagrant violators versus people who are just did it by accident. So I'm not sure how that's all gonna work. But yeah, like there's no reason there can't be licenses with the publishers. There should be, artists should be paid for their work. That includes musicians and people in the music industry. And I'm at a loss to understand what's going on there. But like I said, the attorney in me knows that we don't have all the information, and we don't know what's happening behind the scenes and what's going on there. But they will absolutely have to solve this problem, because there will be other platforms, and once big names start to move to other platforms, it's going to be a problem for Twitch.
Anita, have you had creators sort of on your own roster deal with some of these problems? I know you can't talk to specifics, but yeah. Is this something that you've been fielding sort of recently?
So I would say in the last 6 months, absolutely. So we have been drafting a lot of responses, a lot of counter notifications. Yeah, it's a huge problem. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's often music that's flagged where it's an accident, where somebody's flagging it when they're not the rights holder. It's a mess. And so there's no way it's so difficult to solve this problem without just getting blanket music licenses. And that has been done and continues to be done by other platforms, and it needs to be done by Twitch, period. That's the only way to solve this problem.
Can we talk about the creators that you represent? I have sort of two questions there. One is, have you ever thought about sort of being more vertically integrated, right? Where instead of being part of the team that supports the creator, being everything to them, right? Their manager, their lawyer, all of the above. I'm curious why, if you think those jobs should not be joined or consolidated, why they should stay separate. I'm curious your view on that. And then second, what is the right point in your mind when a creator should be approaching you? Like, how big do they have to be? What kind of, is it only when they have an issue, like when they get a letter from some other lawyer? What is that moment when they should be talking to you in your mind?
Right. So to answer the first question, which I can't even remember what it was, can you repeat it?
Just the vertical integration and how you feel about that, right? Like, should law firms be talent managers also?
Yeah, so it's very difficult. So first of all, practically speaking, it's a bandwidth issue, right? So if I was a lawyer and a manager to somebody, a manager's hands-on day-to-day execution, of brand deals and the whole works. Like I would have my roster would be cut down by, a tenth or like way more than that. It would be cut down by over, my math isn't very good, obviously, but it would be cut down by like 75%, right? If I was doing that. So there's a bandwidth issue. There's also a conflict of interest issue, right? So if I'm a manager, I'm going to be pushing deals on my client, like, hey, this is a great idea, you should do this deal, because I'm going to be commissioning it at 15-20%, whatever that is. Whereas as the attorney, I'm supposed to be looking at it more objectively and thinking, like, is this in the best interest of my client? Does this, contract protect them? Does this agreement protect them? If it doesn't, I'm going to tell a client to pass. Whereas if I'm a manager, I might be more willing to sort of, and not all managers are like this, but a manager is trying to get deals done, right? So it's just, there's a conflict of interest, aspect there as well. So that's why you don't see law firms doing that. There's also ethics and all kinds of stuff that prevent us from being vertically integrated in that way. I mean, I guess my firm could open a separate arm potentially, but again, there would have to be the lawyers just being lawyers and managers just being managers, and there wouldn't be that crossover, right? So because of the conflict of interest issue. So that's why it's tough to do the vertical integration for a law firm. There's a few different reasons. And the second question was,
just when's the right time to be talking
so I
to?
get this a lot. Yeah, so I get this a lot. So for us, we really look for people that have a potential for growth. So it would be great if somebody that's already huge comes to us, and that happens sometimes, that happens, and that's great. But the more likely scenario is somebody's coming to us and they're emerging, right? Like they're kind of like, I just got this big agreement, and like I'm moving to the next level kind of thing. I think I wouldn't come to a firm before there is some reason to come to a firm, like in the sense that you have a big contract or you have a big agreement or something to, that you need help with, or you have a question, like a specific question, right? Like, hey, I want to form a business entity. How do I do that? How do I protect myself from personal liability? So when you have a question, a business or legal question, or you have an actual agreement in hand or a letter from a lawyer or whatever that may be, I think that's a good time to come. And like I said, like we'll take on, all sorts of people. I mean, we're really looking for that potential for growth. And in gaming, I mean, it's, again, like there's so many emerging gamers out there that it would be like, we wouldn't have any gaming clients if we just chose to take on big gaming clients.
Just changing gears a bit, can we talk about balance of power? Because this is also something that is a recurring theme on the podcast, on the live stream. I think it all kicked off with sort of the phase Tfue like contract dispute. And, the characterization there was that, the contract was super onerous and, not fair to the creator. And I've always had this fascination in terms of tracking where the balance of power lies today with creators versus sort of whatever counterparty, whether it's a brand or an org or whatever. How would you characterize sort of creator power today, right? Like, are the contracts getting increasingly more favorable to the creator? Are the brands and orgs sort of losing power? How would you characterize it?
So, I touched on this before in the sense that when I started, my clients didn't have a lot of leverage because of the gatekeepers that were involved, right? With the internet, those gatekeepers have been removed, right? So again, you don't need a studio exec to approve your work. You can build your own audience. That's hugely powerful, right? You own your channel. You own that audience. I mean, that's amazing, right? So that gives, we're in a creator economy now, right? For that reason. So that gives creators a lot of power. Having said that, this is a business, right? So when you get a contract from a brand or FaZe Clan or whoever it is, it's not going to be favorable to you. Like, why would it be, right? If I were them, why would I give you a favorable contract? This is business. So, maybe I sound like an asshole saying that, but welcome to the real world, So when I get a contract like that, I'm not offended. I'm like, this is coming from them. Of course, it's going to be onerous and ridiculous. And that's why it's important to have representation, somebody who knows what they're talking about, who can advocate for you. I mean, I do a ton of negotiation and I love it. And I recently just shot a negotiation course with a client, but your biggest amount of power comes from your ability to walk away. So you have to go into any negotiation knowing what your bottom line is as a creator. And if you stick to that bottom line and you know this is the minimum that I want, and if they won't give it to me, I'm walking away, that gives you a tremendous amount of power. And so that's, I do think creators have much more power these days because of the reasons that I talked about, because they built their own audiences, because they own their channel, because they can create content prolifically and put it up. But having said that, they're not getting favorable contracts, right? That's a business point.
So to that same
Jimmy,
point
yeah.
though, I mean, when you get those contracts, and again, without discussing specifics in your clients, but rather your general experience, curious maybe at the start of your representation of creators in this space, and contrasting or comparing that to current representation, just the ease of the ability to negotiate, where like, hey, these companies are actually becoming more reasonable or more agreeable when I propose counter terms and when you're going through that negotiation process. I'm curious how I suppose that's matriculated over the past few years uh, in your representation of creators.
Sure. So, I mean, Google is famous for this, right? Google is famous for extending contracts and being like, we don't make changes. And they do. So, I will tell all creators that they will make changes. It's really about how you approach the situation. The way that I look at that and the way that I approach companies that are telling us they're not going to make any changes is like, hey, my client's super excited to do this. There's a few things that we need to talk about that we don't think are reasonable. We need some changes in here. And once you start a conversation as opposed to making demands, I think it's really like it's all in the approach, it's all in how you talk to them. But it's also knowing I need to know before I go into a negotiation or redlining contracts or anything, like how badly does the client want it, right? Like what does this mean to them? What kind of concessions are we going to make? We might make concessions where they want to build a relationship with that company, which makes sense, right? So we would make more concessions than we would normally make. But if it's a brand coming in and underpaying a client, they're like, no, this is my minimum rates, then we're going to walk, right? If we can't get what minimum rates, we can command, we're going to walk. So it's all like context specific, situation specific. But I will tell you that these companies are open to negotiation, and there's many contracts. I can't speak specifically, but I can say that there's big contracts, big companies in gaming where we have been able to get concessions where they have told us there are not going to be any changes. And I think part of it is also when it's coming from an attorney, they listen, and they're at least like, it will go to their legal, and then you've got two attorneys talking to each other, and the other attorney's like, yeah, of course you call this out because it is ridiculous, and so we will make changes. They're not going to say that, but they're going to think it in their heads.
So you brought up an interesting thing that I want just a little more time on this, and that's kind of balancing egos against each other. And I think whether you're an attorney or you're just involved in a deal in any capacity, that's always something that comes to light, right? There's egos on both sides, and I'm curious what practices or tools you've found or anecdotes that you can share where you've had to deal with difficult egos or on either side of the equation, that you either the deal fell apart because of it or you were able to save it. I can share my own personal history where my very first deal, we lost out on it because there were some very big egos in the room, and I was probably too inexperienced at the time to really know how to navigate those waters. So I'm hopeful that any learnings here can be applied not just for my own selfish reasons but for our listeners as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been lucky. I think in the entertainment industry, I mean, there's definitely big egos, but within digital media, within gaming, I think it's very young, right? So you're dealing with people who are really young. Like I like to joke around with my husband. Everybody I work with is 20 something, and I think that it's generationally, it's a different mindset. I don't think you're dealing with that so much with the big egos. I think it's a different approach in that sense. I mean, I have one funny story where the first day that an intern came in from Cardozo, from the Cardozo Law School, we take some interns from there, law students, and she sat in on a phone call with me that turned into a screaming match, and that never happens. And like, she was just like, I was like mortified, right? Because this is like her first day, and I'm trying to tell her like she's a law student, and I'm like, this is not how it really is. Like, this is not me. This is an exception to the rule. These people were just being ridiculous. And the attorney was just really annoying, and then we ended up, she ended up sort of, it got personal with respect to insulting my client, which really upsets me. And at that point, it was like the gloves were off. But That rarely happens, and I think that many times these deals are win-win situations, and it's not an adversarial relationship, even though it's a negotiation. So I think I try to approach it as a win-win. And again, if I know when my clients want to walk away, what the bottom line is, it makes it a lot easier for me, But even when deals fall through, and they definitely do, I think it's still important to be professional, be polite, because you never know where you're going to meet that person again, and it's a small industry.
Anita, can we talk about a specific case where I'd love your insight, sort of, be my virtual fly on the wall here. And this was from this week. We saw Ludwig, was a huge Twitch streamer, be the latest to move over to YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. Where he is committed to YouTube exclusively and won't be streaming on Twitch. And in his announcement, he said, obviously, YouTube offered him more money, which was part of the reasoning. But I'm curious if you're sort of the lawyer that is representing Ludwig in this situation, right? What is that discussion like? What does the insider discussion center around, focus on, right? Like, where do you guide or advise someone like that in that moment when they have sort of these two competing offers?
So if YouTube is coming after one of my clients, I'm probably going to be jumping for joy, because I'm going to know, because we're commission based, and I'm going to know that they're going to be offering a lot of money. I mean, look, I'm half serious about that, but I will say there's considerations, and the biggest consideration being like, is your audience going to move to YouTube, right? Are they going to transfer and like watch you live streaming and playing games on YouTube? I mean, that's the biggest question ultimately, right? Is this the right business move? Because a lot of money up front could mean a huge sacrifice, down the road. And so I think that's like the biggest consideration. And again, why people are hesitant to move off Twitch, because all the eyeballs are on Twitch, right? So it's it's a big decision to move to YouTube. I do know for a fact that YouTube is aggressively moving into shorts to compete with TikTok, aggressively moving into gaming. And again, we're talking about Google. I mean, of course there's gonna be an impact there, right? Like, they have, not only deep pockets, but like rabbit hole pockets. And so they can, if they decide they want to get into gaming, they're gonna get into gaming, and they're gonna get some big names. And so it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. But ultimately, you have to look at all these different factors, and it's a business decision. And is your business going to grow, or is it going to, shrink, which obviously you don't want, just for a big payout up front. So it's really thinking long-term, is this the right move? But, another thing is, if you're going to go to YouTube, they're obviously going to treat you right. And then, in those negotiations, you're going to work on, well, how are they going to market you? How are they going to put a billboard up in Times Square? Like, those are the questions I would ask. I mean, again, it's more about just the money, it's exposure. Like, they can offer you an incredible amount of exposure. So you're asking for all of these things that might not be on the table initially, but you're really looking at it as like, how can this benefit my business, like 360, like all the way around.
I love that. Jimmy, I don't know if you had anything else. I love ending on that, because I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'm pretty happy with where this conversation headed. Thank you, Anita. That was wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anita, for our listeners, before I wrap up here, I'm just curious, if you want to be found, how can people find you, follow you, or follow the firm?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I'm so boring. You can find me on LinkedIn, but I tell my clients, like, look, you don't want your attorney on Instagram, and like, you don't
You're
want
not doing TikTok, Anita.
Yeah,
is that it?
Exactly. Like, maintaining a bit of an air of mystery for your attorney is actually a good thing. And it would just, I can't compete with my clients' content. I don't even want to try. So I'm just like, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out. Check out my website at sharmalawpllc.com. We just redid it, and you can get in touch with me through the website or through LinkedIn. We respond to every single inquiry, even the crazy ones. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Anita, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Super insightful and just so relevant. I mean, more and more of these issues are just front of mind in our news every single week. So it's always great to get sort of a legal insight and viewpoint.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. And I, would love to come on again. So if you need another, lawyer talk, feel free to reach out.
Perfect. And for our listeners, obviously, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Just a reminder, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday. So every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, we do a live stream. It's all the news that we don't cover in the podcast. And the best part is we get to do it live with you guys. It's a bigger cast. It's a lot of fun. You get to ask questions, get in our faces, challenge us. So highly recommend checking that out. And make sure to follow us everywhere. It's Biz Esports or Business of Esports everywhere, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitter, on everywhere you get your podcast. So make sure to follow us, subscribe to us everywhere. And as always, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Anita. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.